I'm the CEO of Sunwalker Farms in Canandaigua, New York, um, a prospective cultivator in New York State under social equity. And I'm also part of the Veterans Committee for the Cannabis Association of New York.
Awesome. And Sarah?
My name is Sarah Stenoff. I am a AUCC conditional cultivator license holder. I'm the founder and CEO of Ananda Farms, and also the founder and director of Veterans Ananda, which is a 501c3 here in New York.
Kurt, I'll start with you. Tell me a little bit about Sunwalker Farms.
Yeah, so about 2 or so years ago, I left the IT industry and that career path to pursue horticulture and to hopefully get my farm one day. And so 2 years removed, I do have a farm, 25 acres in Canandaigua. And so a big part of my mission is horticulture therapy. And that's something that really helped me in my transition out of the military. And I didn't even know it till it just found me. And Sarah and I talked about that the other day. But yeah, that's sort of what led to this career change and why I'm pursuing this. And also, I'm lucky enough to be one of 12 disabled vets that are part of the Cannabis Compliance Training and Mentorship Program. It's the inaugural mentorship program for New York State, and really there isn't any like it throughout the whole country. So it's a pretty big deal, and some hard work is paying off.
Okay, couple of questions. Delve a little deeper into what you were just talking about. What is horticulture therapy?
Yeah, so you can, by being with the plants, by being, fingers in the dirt kind of a thing, that you get out of your own head and you're able to sort of be at peace and work things out, even though you might not be talking to a therapist or something and working through deep issues and things like that. Although that does work, I find that horticulture therapy is really saved my life in a lot of ways. So hopefully that answers your question.
So is it essentially like because you're caring for something?
Correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
just to elaborate on that, I guess the more you're focusing on other things and taking care of a living thing from start to finish, it really just gets you out of your own head, and you're able to heal in that way. It's I guess that's the best way I can explain it right now. But yeah, getting yourself out of your own head and focusing on other things that you might be passionate about. So that could be common through many different things throughout your life, whether that's just activities, exercise, whatever it might be. In my case, horticulture therapy.
Now, tell me a little bit about if you don't mind, about your experience and your disability.
You're talking military experience?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So in the Marine Corps, I was an embassy guard. So I did internal and external security embassies all over the world: Baghdad, Iraq, Tunis, Tunisia, Bangkok, Thailand, and Juba, South Sudan during pre and post crisis events. So yeah, a lot of my military time was spent overseas or training to go overseas. And I've experienced some injuries in training, some out in theater and on these different missions. So without or hopefully answers the question.
It does. And so, I mean, we talk to veterans sometimes about the transition of coming back into society, and how challenging that can be for so many veterans for so many different reasons, right? What was your experience like? And I guess, how did finding your current footing where you are now sort of help you? Did it help you with your transition into, sort of just coming back?
Yeah, so leaving the Marine Corps, it didn't seem scary at first. I was like, I'm a Marine, I can tackle certain things. And I think a lot of veterans have that mindset when they get out,
Right.
and they
Like
feel
I'm
like,
clearly very tough, so I can handle it. Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
exactly. Like you just have that mindset. But so I really clung on to my top secret clearance, working in the Department of Defense and Department of State as an embassy guard. And so I thought, oh, I'll just go back into that same field, but the civilian version. But deep down, I knew it wasn't for me. It's just that's all I thought I brought to the table. This is my training. I have a top secret clearance. Let me ride this out because I can make some decent money, especially in the IT field. Not that I'm money driven, but it was just, it seemed like my quick pivot. And yeah, after about 5 or so years, I was in a very bad spot mentally. I do not belong at a desk. I, not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just how I'm built. I need to be out doing some physical things, and I believe farming and horticulture brought that to life for me. Um, IT is great. I love knowing and learning the stuff that I did, and but I can apply it in into my business now, and tracking data and analytics and whatever that might be. But yeah, hopefully answers the question.
It does. And it kind of reminds me of like I feel like oftentimes we can get caught up in what we do for a living as like becoming our identity. And I am someone who's totally guilty of that. Like for a while I was like, I'm a reporter. Like that's who I am, right? That's what I am. And then I realized that that was a slippery slope. Like if you think of yourself as being good at one thing and then that's who you are,
Yeah,
it can really quickly sort of spiral into like, wait a minute, that isn't all that I am. And then you have to kind of rediscover yourself and sort of
yeah,
figure out what you really do want out of life, which is such a challenge. But once you get there, it's such a great feeling, right?
yeah. It's like you're seeing the world through a different lens, and yeah, you said it perfectly. Couldn't said it better myself. And yeah, it's like an awakening, a reawakening, or something like that when you find your true purpose. Because a lot of my life, I just sort of did, you grow up in high school and school and you do what you got to do. And your parents are sort of,
Hmm.
you're under their jurisdiction. And I go off to the military. Now I'm under someone else's. Um, yeah. And you just try to cling on to something and try to find yourself. And at 35 years old, I'm glad I've found this passion. And I sort of always knew that I wanted to end up in farming, but I just didn't know. I thought it was like after I retired from IT and all that kind of thing. And but yeah, well put, well said.
Great. So Kurt, I'm going to pause you right there and then we're going to switch over to Sarah and then we're going to kind of get into like the topic at hand and what we're sort of advocating and pushing for or what you guys are advocating for. But for now we're going to transition over to Sarah. Hi Sarah.
Hello. Good
How are
job,
you?
Kurt.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. Thank you for having us. And
Of
thank you,
course.
Kurt, for having this, bud.
Yeah. So can you sort of tell me a little bit about yourself and your story the same way that Kurt has?
Um, I think a lot of veterans, we may not have the same story, but a lot of our issues run parallel. Um, I got in, I had scholarships through NROTC, through the Marine Corps, ended up opting over to the Army as an Apache crew chief, did deployments to Afghanistan, find myself in a predicament where I ended up getting seizures from epilepsy due to TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. Come to find out, you can't have seizures and work on helicopters. So I was an Apache crew chief, and I got medically retired out in 13. At that point, like many veterans trying to transition out, I felt blindfolded. I felt like, hey, you did your service, here's a handshake, and then, where do you go? It's hard to navigate your benefits, what you have, you don't have, school, what you're going to do. And for me, I was getting civilian jobs left and right, but I couldn't be on the bird. So I was really at a rut as to what I was doing for the rest of my life, retiring, in my mid 20s. um,
Right.
so I tried the same thing with the GI Bill, didn't work too well, found myself uh, snorting plethora amount of cocaine and drinking uberance amount of alcohol and really being self-destructive. Nothing could keep up to the adrenaline I have. Nothing kept up. I had no mission, no purpose, no sense of hope. After 2 failed suicide attempts and a couple times in jail and realizing I'm on 16 medications, I was like, enough. And one of my buddies introduced me to cannabis. And the next thing yes, I'll admit I was taking it like another drug. I was misusing it, but I wasn't using other things, and I was getting out of the house, and then I wasn't taking these needed medications. And that sparked me to then learn about cannabis and then learn about my body. And that was my pivotal moment that, again, the plant kind of found me, kind of like Kurt said. And when I thought it was psychotic or crazy enough to use fungi and botanicals to treat myself, I was like, I wonder who else is out there doing it. And I created a social media alias called Happy Healing 420, which is what our license is under, DBA to Nanda Farms. And I just connected with people via social media, taught people how to learn how to grow at home and so forth. Ended up getting a bunch of sponsors for tents and lights and grow stuff because I just provided free medicine to vets. I never charged a dime. And it got to the point where my wife was like, we can't keep living in the suburbs with 5 tents. You know, you need a farm. You know, you love the land. This is your calling. And it was, like Kurt said, it was my mission. It was my purpose again. And it's not like taking out the trash or watching a kid or going to that 9 to 5 desk. There is no mission and purpose. If I don't tend to these plants, get my ass out of bed, water these girls, get my hand in the dirt, they die. Like, this is life or death back mode for
Right.
me.
Right. Yes.
Sparked
I know
me.
exactly what you mean.
It was, and it's sad to say that that's what got me out of bed after years of trying to find some, but it did. And when I connected online to other people, I realized how not crazy I was to utilize fungi and botanical, but also how many other veterans felt this way. And looking at the crazy statistics in farming, there's high suicide rates in farming, high suicide rates in veterans. And I figured this could either be something catastrophic or something beautiful. But what our veterans are saying is they love farming. They want a place like this. They just don't know how to go or how to start it up or what to do. And I'm like, I don't want to be alone on a farm. I like that nomad setting, but I like my community. I miss my brothers and sisters. So what if we got a farm and kind of build in, they will come. And out of that started a for-profit and a nonprofit. At our nonprofit, we do short duration, high impact retreats and long-term post-traumatic growth programs, utilizing public and private healthcare really around that agro cognitive type therapy, getting hands in the dirt. And that's where the name Ananda came from. It's Sanskrit, that internal joy, that internal bliss. And there's the real way to get that is to be one with yourself. And to be one with yourself, you need to be one with nature. And that's what we believe. And we create individualized treatment plans here. And as a nonprofit, I didn't want to chase paychecks. I didn't want to throw galas for individuals. Honestly, we just don't give two shits about. We wanted to really raise our own funds. And we're like, our veterans have skills, they have opportunities, they have GI bills, educational benefits, many of us health insurance.
Work ethic,
Exactly.
right? That's a big one.
Yeah, persistence, leadership, discipline, pre-existing training, and the experience to endure this training. And we're like, with a lot of skills that can transfer over. And we're like, let's create a for-profit subsidiary, nab this hemp license, got a hemp license, helped to get PTSD on the medical program. And then when cannabis opened, we jumped on it. So our foci is really around training technical assistants, helping veterans find their niche in agriculture or niche in whatever industry, build up their resumes, business plan, and help them find their niche in society, not just be functioning members of society, but leaders in society again.
Now, question that something that I thought right away. How long have you been sober from like hard drugs and alcohol?
My son is 9 years old now, a beautiful boy. I've been clean for 8 years, over 8 years. Thank you.
That's a huge accomplishment, right? Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, 8 years, that's a long time. So congratulations. Okay, so then moving along into what you two are advocating for. I know Kurt had kind of given me the really brief version of that. It has something to do with that maybe there isn't a liaison for veterans at the Office of Cannabis Management. Am I getting that right?
Correct.
Okay, so Kurt, can you talk a little bit about what that is, why you're trying to raise awareness about it, and why that's an issue?
Absolutely. So the quick version is the OCM, Office of Cannabis Management, has defined what social equity is, and social equity will be able to hopefully get licenses to enter the market sooner. And so as disabled veterans, there's a decent amount of us that are advocating. Sarah's one of them, and there's others out there. That if we are part of social equity, it only makes sense for us to have a representative in the OCM, on the control board, or the advisory board, or in the organization itself in any capacity, even if it's a part-time position. But no one can really advocate on behalf of veterans or disabled veterans if they haven't served themselves. And so I know Sarah feels that that position is warranted. Um, she's been at this a lot longer than I, so she is more of a mentorship or a vet within the vets. She's been around and doing this for a while with her for-profit and nonprofit. So hopefully that answers the first question. And like I said, Sarah's been at this a lot longer than I, and she has some other great points that she's talked about in previous articles and things like that that I'm sure she'll bring up now. And one of the things that we did discuss offline a few days ago or last week is we're not just going to point out problems. We want to point out the problem, but then offer solutions, because we know that the Office of Cannabis Management was just stood up not too long ago. And that means their employee base, they might not have everyone to drive these things along. And then if we can be of any help to come up with certain plans to help drive these things forward and get a veteran rep or a veteran liaison in the OCM to represent us, that's what we'd like to do.
All right, Sarah.
No, Kurt pretty summed it up really well. The MRTA created the social equity definition, which breaks down the defined categories within social equity. And now, remember, the MRTA bill is defined as the social equity bill. So obviously, the social equity portion is a huge push to getting the agenda or the bill passed. So the definitions within that are women, minorities, minority women, distressed farmers, and service disabled veterans. Not all veterans, because us 3% had to get marginalized down to 2% somehow, So long story short, there's these categories for the social equity bill and the social equity definition. They came out with the OCM board, which right now is a very diverse board, but however has no veterans. Then they came out with Section 14, which is the makeup of the advisory board. Now, granted, there's not a requirement from the Director of Minority or Women Affairs, but there are women on the board. There is an NAACP member. There's a Black man on the board. There is a farmer on the board. So when you have these individuals sitting on the board, yes, they may be representing the human resources department and this guy from the ag and markets, but you're not going to tell the woman she's not a woman. You're not going to tell the Black man he's not a Black man, the farmer they're not a farmer, even though they represent that category. So you have these seats at the board in a very diverse way, representing all members of the social equity definition, but veterans. There's not even a service disabled vet, but not a veteran, period, on the board or the advisory committee. Now, unfortunately, to change something like that, in order to adjudicate a matter like that, it would be a legislative issue, which legislation just opened up. Any of us knowing bureaucratics and politics, this could take months, if not years, to adjudicate and try to change the definition under Section 14 to create a position permanently for vets, because it's, again, only a 3-year term. So even if we get somebody in there, we're going to be fighting every 3 years just to maintain a vet unless we change the definition of it. That's one solution, and one we got a lot of rolling up our sleeves for. A non-legislative solution is to take one of these pre-existing civil service positions that are currently open. If you go under the OCM, go under jobs, there's plenty of civil service jobs opening, and even the social equity department said they would love to double up in employment this year. So this is all part of their agenda. So if we're sitting back as veterans going, if we have no placement on the board, if we have no placement on the advisory board either, why not utilize one of the civil service positions and create a veteran liaison or representative position so veterans can at least have a voice in there? And this, again, would not require a legislative change to anything, and it would be a permanent fix, a permanent solution, utilizing pre-existing money and allocated funds with pre-existing jobs.
I mean, it sounds fair, right?
Exactly. And us veterans were, again, and that's the key word, it's fair. It's not like us veterans are coming in and go, we deserve this and want it more than X, Y, and Z. No, all defined applicants need to advocate for their rights. And what we want is fairness across that definition. If you're going to use us as part of a definition in order to create an agenda and a push to pass a bill,
Include us
well,
in the
then support it.
conversation. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're
I don't
not
mean to
asking
finish your
somebody.
sentence, but yeah.
No, you got it wrong. We just want fairness, equal representation, and access. And right now, without a voice, we don't feel we have fair representation.
So what would change then? Say something, either the legislative situation changed or the civil service thing panned out, and then you did have someone on the board who was a veteran. What good do you think that would do?
It would have somebody there to captivate on what we have. Not only does a voice provide us a chance to make sure our service disabled veterans, who are what we're talking about, not just all veterans, it's just service disabled veterans, unfortunately, but they would have the seat at the table to make sure when mentorship programs roll out, we have access. When allocated funds come out and disbursement of licensures and application, they'll make sure that we have a push that we're getting represented. But it also allows somebody in there to say, hey, listen, we're having a problem right now figuring out insurance. We're having a problem right now with banking and loans. A lot of us vets, we have banking, we have insurance. We were able to secure loans because we're one of the few, thanks to Uncle Sam, as service disabled vets, as they defined us, we get paychecks to our door every month. A lot of us have insurance. So we've been able to secure banks, secure loans, a lot of things that are different there. But our pre-existing military training, we have MOS training, certifications, clearances, GI bills, 9/11 bills, free certificate and classes we can take, SBA business classes, farm classes, free to us at our disposals. The opportunities and incentives we have, which allow us to be so successful in a multitude of industries. Just for instance, New York State, we're one of the top 4 small business states, service disabled business, small businesses in the nation. So one of the top 4. In under 5 years, our businesses gross over $500,000 yearly. Our numbers are practically flipped in this society, and to see that, veterans represent 3%, service disabled veterans 2%, it speaks volume to show what we can do with our skills and training in a numerous amounts of industries. And again, it's because we have access and opportunities to a lot of things civilians don't. But we need to capitalize on those.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Anything else you wanted to add? Anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
What about you, Kurt? You got anything?
I'm still thinking through that. I think one thing that if I didn't mention it, it's good to mention now is, I have nothing but respect for what the OCM is doing. I know they're not, this isn't a small task trying to stand up an industry in the state and to do it right and to do it right by, social equity and to put that at the forefront. And so as a disabled vet, getting selected as one of the 12 in their inaugural program, it's an honor. It really is, because there's no other program like it. So I think our approach to this whole thing is we have nothing but respect, but we do deserve a seat at the table to represent us, because there is funds available or will be available at some point for social equity candidates, that it could be cultivation, processing, retail, what have you. And, I think a veteran rep is warranted. But if they don't, if they end up hearing this and this is all they get out of it, we have nothing but respect. But we do want a seat at the table, and I think that pretty much clears it up for me.
All
I
right.
think that's the best thing to say is we have to remember that a domino effect is happening from state to state, where individuals, minorities, whether it's veterans, BIPOC community, become another face and an afterthought, and veterans are often that afterthought of an afterthought. And unfortunately, we still, even though New York State has been pioneering something truly beautiful, and I'm blessed to have a license and be able to mentor vets, we need to remember that a lot of our veterans are still facing the war on drugs right here at our own bases. We got active reservists, so forth. Even though the state is legal, we have members who are still in the military who live here, who are still facing the war on drugs, who could face UCMJ and harsh punishment by doing this. And veterans are still losing benefits. They are still getting dishonorably discharged for marijuana right here in New York at Fort Drum, the 174th, so forth. So to do this and allow a voice and show them that we're advocating for them. I hope they get out, because when I got out, I don't know about others, I really felt lost. I didn't have a sense of mission, purpose. I really felt nobody was there advocating for me. I was screaming at the top of my lung for healthcare, for needs, for anything. And I hope this just sparks veterans to let them know, they have a place here. We're fighting for you. You got a seat at the table, but we're not going to become another domino effect like the other states, an afterthought of an afterthought, another face onto a bill. And the OCM, again, like Kurt said, they're really pioneering something different in this state. And to truly keep it like that, I think it would just require just fair representation across the board for everybody.
Wonderful. And I think, like, for my final question, just so I'm clear on where you sit, both of you, with like your licenses, are you about to get a license, or like you have a license, or what is that? Where does that stand?
We have a license currently. In AUCC, we have an adult use conditional cultivator license, and currently in the
Okay.
process transitioning to full rec once they open.
So Kurt, you will have a license.
That's not guaranteed.
Oh,
As part of the cannabis compliance training and mentorship program, it's very possible, but the current regulations are in a 60-day comment period. So we actually don't have social equity regulations yet. We have proposed regs. And so I'm a prospective cultivator in the state, just with the farm, just finished building my greenhouse, and I'm just starting to get things going. And so I'm in a holding pattern right now, like many throughout the state. And I hope to get a cultivation license, a micro business license at some point soon.
all right, great.